let's take a look at some things about that we know, some facts about triangles. So first of all, we're going to talk about right angle triangles. Right angled triangles. So just do a little triangle symbol. Right angle triangles. Now let's draw a right angle triangle. I'll make it fairly big so we've got lots of room. That's not going to be a very good right angle, but hey, it'll do. So that's our right angle there. Let's call it C. Big C. The big C. And then we call the side opposite the right angle little c. Also known as, aka, the hypotenuse. Okay, now let's, while we're introducing the triangle, telling you all about it, where it comes from and what have you, let's call the other angles A and B. And the side opposite angle B, we'll call that little b. The side opposite angle A, we'll call that little a. So there's our right angle triangle. Right there like that. Now, let's have a talk about this Pythagoras. Pythagoras. O-R-A-S. Pythagoras and his theorem. Now, what he said was, he said that the square on the hypotenuse, c squared, equals the sum of the squares on the other two sides. A squared plus b squared. So that's the theorem of Pythagoras. It took mankind a few thousand years to get their head around that, and here you are. I've passed on that gem to you in less than 5 minutes. That's assuming that you didn't know it already. So Pythagoras' theorem. Now let's have a look at another triangle, another type of triangle, and that's what we call an equilateral triangle. Equilateral. Equi meaning equal, lateral is associated, equilateral triangle associated with straight, you know, like a lateral thinker, thinking out beyond the science, but equilateral triangle. Now, I'm hoping that you know that the three angles, and we just got L, S, bit of maths, text sort of language there. Three angles of the triangle, so we just use the triangle symbol. Three angles of a triangle add to or equal 180 degrees when you add them up. So if we go 180 divided by 3, that's equal to 60 degrees. Now the thing about the equilateral triangle is this. Let's try and draw quite a big one here. Just go right out to there. Put more room up there. The thing about the equilateral triangle, we can make all the angles 60 degrees, 60 degrees, 60 degrees, but the thing is that all the sides are the same length. Now let's choose a side. Well, let's say they're going to be, let's make them length 2. The reason hopefully will become obvious soon. So 2 like that. So change your pen colour over here, put in a bit of red. Now let's see if we drop a line from there straight down to there, right angles to the base, you can see that that's going to cut that in half. So that'll be 1, 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. And it'll cut this angle here in half, this 60-degree angle. That angle there will become 30 degrees. And that one there will become 30 degrees also. Alright, and let's just, by way of a little check, 30 plus 60 plus 90 equals 180 degrees. So yep, there's nothing missing, everything's accounted for. So, okay, let's just turn that layer off and we'll start a new layer. Okay, layer 2. We'll draw a nice, let's undo that little indiscretion there, and we'll draw a nice yellow line down here. And we'll reproduce our triangle here, quite large, the one that we drew on the last. You know, I can turn it on for you if you like. Turn it on here, and there it is there. Okay, so it's a bit confusing, so we'll turn it off. So we know that there's length 2, and there's 1. But we don't know what this is. So this is a right angle here, we knew that. So let's call that C. Okay, so this will be little c, and let's call this A, and this B. And then this here will be little b, and this here would be little a. Right, now we know C and B, so we want to know what A. Now hang on, we've got Pythagoras' theorem. We've got Pythagoras on our side, so let's go C squared equals A squared. I'll just undo that a little bit here, just to make it a little clearer later on. C squared, I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap there, equals A squared plus B squared. But we want to find out what A squared is, so we need to get that on its own somehow. So if we just, using our red pen here, if we just subtracted B squared from that side of the equation, okay, that would be plus B squared, which leave A squared on its own. Now what we do to one side we must do to the other, so we also got to subtract B squared from this side of the equation, otherwise it's not an equation, it would be unequal or unbalanced. So going back to the yellow pen, we'll collect our thoughts here. If we could just check that we have got a yellow pen. So let's C squared minus B squared equals A squared. Now to get A on its own, as we know, what we've got to do is take the square root. Square root of A squared, square root of C squared minus B squared. Now we know the square root of A squared, that's A. But we can't work out the square root of, well yes we can, because we can make that the square root of C squared, which is 2 times 2 is 4, and B squared, 1 times 1 is 1, so we get the square root of 3 equals A by Pythagoras. So let's fill that in on our triangle. equals the square root of 3. And we must also remember our angles, which we already know, which is 60. And that's 30. And that, of course, is 90. So, there you go. We've got a triangle now. And now, hey, look, this is where it gets real interesting. Because we can now work out sine of 30 degrees. Using our old friend SOHCAHTOA. So sine 30 degrees equals the opposite of 30 degrees there is 1 over the hypotenuse, 2, which is a half. Cos 30 degrees equals the adjacent over the hypotenuse, which is root 3 over 2. And these numbers like root 3, we can't work them out evenly to an even number. They're called irrational numbers. Just thought you might want to know that. Something that you can slip into conversations. And so cos of 30, and then we can do also we can do tan of 30, tangent of 30 degrees, and the tan of 30 degrees is the opposite, which is 1 over the adjacent, 1 over root 3. Now, then we can do sine 60 degrees. Sine of 60 degrees is the opposite, root 3 over hypotenuse 2. Cos 60 degrees equals cos of 60 is the opposite, which is root cos of adjacent over the hypotenuse, a half, and tan 60 degrees equals adjacent, tan of 60, opposite over adjacent, root 3 over 2. Tan of 60, root 3 over 1. Sorry, root 3 over 1. So that's all pretty good. Yeah, so there, look at all that information from just some basic facts. But wait, there's more. So we'll just start up another new layer, layer 3, turn layer 2 off, put in our ubiquitous yellow line down here, and let's start with another triangle, the Isosceles Triangle. The beauty of the Isosceles Triangle is that the two angles are equal, these two sides are equal, and if we make this 90 degrees here, we get our hypotenuse, which is C here, angle C here, C, and I'll just call that A, B. So we're now familiar with our triangle. We can name them pretty good. Little b, little a. Okay, and let's give them a length. Let's give them a length, say 1. Let's give them a length, say 1. Now by Pythagoras, we know that c squared equals a squared plus b squared, which we can work out. A squared is, a is 1, a squared is 1 plus 1. So c squared, and we know that by taking the square root of both sides, we can end up with c equals square root of 2. So equals root 2. We also know that these angles are the same, as we said, because they're both 45 degrees. So, moving on, with our old friend once again, Sohcahtoa. With our old friend Sohcahtoa, we can now look at sine 45 degrees equals opposite over hypotenuse. So there's 45. The opposite is 1, and the hypotenuse is root 2. Cos 45 degrees equals adjacent, which is 1 over the hypotenuse, root 2. And tan 45 equals opposite, which is 1 over adjacent, which equals 1, which equals 1. So there we are. Let's just have a look now at where we've come. So if we just turn off layer 2 and layer 3, and we'll just have layer 1. So we introduced the right angle triangle. We learned about the longest side opposite the 90-degree right angle. There, it's 90 degrees. It's called the hypotenuse. And then we learned about Pythagoras' theorem, which we knew. Right. So then we moved on to the equilateral triangle. 3 triangle add up to 180, so that's 60 degrees. We were able to introduce a little triangle like so. There, 30 degrees, 90 degrees, 60. Then we took that half of that triangle into our next layer here. Turn that layer off, and with our three angles, we were able to use Pythagoras to compute the side A here as root 3, and then from there, using Sohcahtoa, we were able to, as you can see here, using Sohcahtoa here, using Sohcahtoa, here we were able to work out sine of 30, cos of 30, tan 30, sine 60. And then we moved on further to our third layer and made layer 3. Those ones are visible, and we drew an isosceles, I-S-O-S-C-E-L, isosceles triangle up there, which has 2 sides the same length and 2 angles the same, and by naming that we can work out the sine of 45, cos of 45, and the tan of 45. That's 45 degrees, that is. Should get that right. 45 degrees. And there we have it. Just a few basic things that we can do with a limited amount of knowledge that can help us build things up from scratch. All good. Thank you.